Hey everybody, it's Tatiana with Back to Facts, and we're about to watch the acting director of Homeland Security speak in Portland regarding the response. Actually, I don't know if he's in Portland speaking. He may be in Washington, but it's about Portland, and he did travel there not too long ago. So he's about to walk on. I've already watched it once, and I still have questions. I still have questions for him. And I think if you disagree with what's going on, then you should watch this, because you'll get some things clarified and some things not. And that's how, that's how we move forward, is we can't dialogue directly with him, but we can hear what he's saying, and then we can come up with our own questions and see if he answers them at some point, or become activists and ask them somehow, write a letter, an email, or write about it. Either way, this was a pretty good session here. Okay, well, for instance, the question I have is, why were the police from different federal departments, like the Federal Marshal and the Border Patrol, why were they wearing camouflage? You said it was because they're with the Border Patrol and they work on the border, but I don't remember ever seeing any Border Patrol agents wearing camouflage and looking like the National Guard. He said they have a badge on their uniform that says police and an insignia. Well, why not more? Why not their name? I mean, wouldn't hurt you to make an effort to do that.
Well, thank you for being here this afternoon. Last night was the 52nd consecutive night of violent activity in downtown Portland targeting federal facilities and federal properties, mainly the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse. The department's mission is very clear. We are charged with protecting federal facilities across the country.
Right.
We have been protecting the courthouse in downtown Portland since 1997, when it first opened.
1997.
We began to see a rise in violent activity targeting federal facilities in late May in Portland, coinciding with the death of George Floyd. Let me reiterate that the department fully supports those who wish to peacefully protest. Let me say this again. We support and we will protect those who want to peacefully protest. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in Portland every night, roughly from midnight to 4:30 or 5 a.m., is the complete opposite. Again, what is occurring in Portland in the early hours of every morning is not peaceful protesting.
At all?
These individuals are organized, and they have one mission in mind: to burn down or to cause extreme damage to the federal courthouse and to law enforcement officers. At times, we also see them targeting city property. These individuals congregate in the same area night after night. We see them planning their attacks. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action to stop or disperse this crowd. These individuals carry lasers, baseball bats, explosive fireworks, metal pipes, glass bottles, accelerants, and other weapons, all targeting federal facilities and federal law enforcement. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action.
Those do sound like weapons.
These individuals have repeatedly destroyed protective fencing, extensively graffitied the courthouse, torn plywood down from the courthouse and lit it on fire, have erected barriers to block entrances to courthouses, attempted to breach the courthouse, have thrown explosive materials in the courthouse.
In the courthouse?
And again,
or into?
The city of Portland takes little to no action. The reasons increased DHS personnel are important, or in Portland, is twofold. One, violent criminal activity every single night for 52 nights. And two, the lack of action from city officials and law enforcement.
I did see that in Santa Monica.
Department law enforcement officers are there to protect a symbol of justice, the courthouse. We mostly do that in a very defensive posture. However, we have been forced, because of lack of local law enforcement presence, to take measures such as arrest to protect our officials. The law is clear on what our authority entails. Specifically, federal statute states that the Secretary of Homeland Security, and I'm quoting, shall protect buildings, grounds, and property that are owned, occupied, and secured by the federal government. The law goes on to state that the department can conduct investigations, again I'm quoting, on and off property in question, on offenses that may have been committed against property owned and occupied by the federal government or persons on that property. In other words, we are expressly allowed to leave federal property to conduct investigations and arrest individuals who have damaged federal property. We do this, of course, in conjunction with the Department of Justice. Many of our law enforcement officers in Portland have other responsibilities around the country. They are away from their families and putting their lives at risk every night. The smear attacks leveled against our officers is disgusting. As it relates to CBP officers deployed in Portland, these highly trained officers are in multi-camouflage wear because they work on the southwest border and they work in an environment that demands that.
Multiple agencies.
That is their everyday uniform, and it is completely appropriate. They have insignia on their uniforms that read police, and they have patches, and the acting commissioner will talk about that in a little bit, that indicate which agency they are from. Let me repeat, these officers are not military. Let's not confuse that. I've seen inaccurate press reporting accusing them of being military. They are not military. They are civilian police officers. These police officers are not stormtroopers. They are not the Gestapo, as some have described them. That description is offensive, it's hyperbolic, and it's dishonest. And every law enforcement officer and every reasonable American knows this. While I look forward to the day that our officers are redeployed back to their regular day-to-day mission, we will not shrink from our duty because of this violence. I've heard the mayor of Portland recently state that the federal government is to blame for this violence. Rational people know that is not true. He would have you believe that enforcing federal law incites violence. He would have you believe that holding criminals accountable incites violence. In the last 52 days, Portland has declared a riot on numerous occasions because of this nightly violence.
Wait.
And while this action helps, unfortunately, they only take this action when city officials or local law enforcement are targeted, not federal.
Oh, really?
On July 3rd, before any surge of DHS law enforcement resources arrived in Portland, the mayor said the violence, and I quote, has been going on for more than a month now. Groups continue to target the Justice Center. They continue to hurt small businesses. And these attacks undermine public safety.
You said they did nothing, the city.
These words are true today as they were before DHS law enforcement arrived in the city of Portland.
Maybe they just didn't want such a heavy
My message is very simple.
But
if you're looking to peacefully protest in Portland, the department respects your right to do so. Please do so away from the violent activity that is taking place near the courthouse on a nightly basis for your own safety. If you are a violent rioter looking to inflict damage to federal property or law enforcement officers, you need to find another line of work. We will not retreat. We will continue to take the appropriate action, protect our facilities and our law enforcement officers.
What is that appropriate action?
If you're a local leader,
can we do better?
Now is the time to step up and protect your community. Work with the department and other federal authorities in Portland to responsibly bring this nightly violence to a close. And if you're in the media, report the facts, all the facts. Do not glamorize the anarchist and the criminals. And do not perpetuate the false narratives many of us have seen recently. I pulled two headlines before coming down here today. One, U.S. official calls protest anarchist. Inaccurate and very misleading. Individuals trying to set fire to a building are no longer protesting. They are criminals.
Yeah. They're not protesting.
I or any other senior official at the department has no problem with peaceful protesters. Said that a couple of times. I'll say that again. Second headline, unidentified federal agents are detaining protesters in Portland. Again, inaccurate and false. As you've heard I say, you'll hear Acting Commissioner Morgan say, all officers are identified as police law enforcement officers. We are only targeting and arresting those who have been identified as committing criminal acts, like any other law enforcement agency does across the country every single day of the week. We all have a responsibility to condone the violent activity that is occurring night after night. I was in Portland last week. It's a beautiful city, but unfortunately I saw buildings and businesses shut down and boarded up. I was briefed that the violence has cost the city businesses roughly 23 million in lost revenue. We cannot let one of our cities continue to experience this lawlessness night after night. Let me turn it over now to Chris Klein, who's our Deputy Director of our Federal Protective Service, FPS.
Okay, so I'm going to
FPS has the mission to protect federal
so that
property
this
across the
video
country.
is short enough to
Deputy Director Klein will walk you through the role of
so
FPS,
you'll wanna view it.
as well as the operational
Thanks for
summary
sharing
of the
complete
past few
facts.
nights